Ladies and gentlemen, failure is often seen as the end, a painful, humiliating reminder that we weren't good enough, smart enough, or strong enough. But what if I told you that failure is not the opposite of success? It's part of success. Every person who has ever achieved greatness has also faced failure not once, but many times. Thomas Edison failed over 1,000 times before he created the light bulb. J.K. Rowling was rejected by 12 publishers before Harry Potter became a global phenomenon. These are not stories of people who avoided failure. These are stories of people who transformed failure into growth. You see, failure isn't the enemy. The real danger is allowing failure to define you. If you let it, failure will convince you that you're not capable. But if you choose to learn from it, failure becomes the most powerful teacher you'll ever have. Growth doesn't happen when things are easy. It happens when you're stretched, when you fall, and when you get back up again stronger, wiser, and more focused. The truth is, success doesn't come from avoiding mistakes. It comes from the courage to make them, to face them, and to grow from them. Every failure carries a lesson, a message about who you are, what you value, and what you need to change or strengthen. So the next time you fail, pause. Don't panic, don't retreat. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I use this to grow? Remember, you are not your failures. You are the person who chooses to rise from them. Growth begins not after success, but the moment you decide to rise again after failure. When most people think about success, they imagine a straight path. Hard work leads to results. Results lead to recognition, and recognition leads to success. But in reality, the path to success is messy, unpredictable, and often full of detours, dead ends, and yes, failure. In fact, failure is not just a possible part of the journey. It is an essential part. The greatest innovators, athletes, leaders, and creators in the world didn't get to where they are by avoiding failure. They got there by embracing it. Think about Michael Jordan, who was cut from his high school basketball team, or Walt Disney, who was told he lacked creativity. These stories aren't rare exceptions. They are examples of how failure is baked into the process of becoming great. Failure teaches you things that success cannot. Success can make you comfortable and even complacent. But failure, it humbles you. It sharpens your focus. It forces you to confront your weaknesses, reevaluate your approach, and work harder, smarter, and with more intention. It strips away the ego and reveals the core of your determination. When you fail, you are being offered one of life's most valuable opportunities, the chance to grow in ways that only adversity can provide. You begin to understand your limb. It's not so you'll stay within them, but so you'll know where to push harder. You start to identify what matters most, what needs your attention, and what must be let go. And the more you fail while staying committed, the more you start to realize something powerful. Success is not built by avoiding failure. It is built on top of failure. Each setback becomes a layer of experience, each disappointment a lesson, and each loss a quiet, steady push toward resilience. If you are walking a path with no failures, you're probably not challenging yourself enough. You're not innovating, you're not risking, and you're not growing. Because real growth doesn't come from doing what's safe, it comes from daring to leap, knowing you might fall and doing it anyway. Let that sink in. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is its foundation. One of the most powerful mindset shifts you can make in life is to stop seeing failure as a punishment and start seeing it as feedback. Failure, in its rawest form, is simply information. It tells you something important, that your current strategy, effort, or direction didn't produce the outcome you wanted. But that doesn't mean you're incapable, it means you're learning. Think about how a scientist works. They test a hypothesis, collect results, and analyze the data. If the experiment fails, They don't throw away the lab coat and give up on science. They look at the failure as feedback, a clue that helps them refine the process and get closer to the breakthrough. Now apply that to your life. Whether it's a failed business, a broken relationship, or an exam you didn't pass, each failure gives you feedback. Maybe you didn't prepare well enough. Maybe your communication wasn't clear. Maybe the timing was wrong. Whatever the case, failure is trying to teach you something, and if you listen closely, it can guide you toward improvement. But most people don't listen. Why? Because failure feels personal. It hurts, it bruises the ego, and that emotional reaction makes it easy to miss the lesson. Instead of asking, "What can I learn from this?" we often ask, "What's wrong with me?" That's the wrong question. There's nothing wrong with you. You're in the process of becoming better. Reframing failure as feedback puts you back in control. It shifts you from feeling helpless to feeling curious. You're no longer a victim of failure, you're a student of it. You begin to treat every challenge as a learning opportunity, not a dead end. And here's the secret. The more you practice this mindset, the faster you grow. People who learn from failure evolve more quickly than those who fear it. Why? Because they're constantly adjusting, improving, and sharpening their skills. They're not afraid to try again. They're just more equipped each time they do. Failure doesn't mean stop. It means listen, reflect, adjust. It's a message not about your limits, but about where your next level of growth can begin. Failure in itself is not what transforms you, it's what you do with it that determines whether it becomes a stepping stone or a stumbling block. Every mistake you make carries with it the seeds of wisdom, insight, and personal evolution if you're willing to learn from it. Think of mistakes as your personal mentors. Unlike traditional teachers, mistakes don't sugarcoat the lesson. They point directly to what went wrong, where the cracks are in your foundation, and what must change if you want to succeed. A mistake is a mirror. It reflects not just the error, but the opportunity. Unfortunately, many people repeat the same mistakes again and again, not because they are incapable, but because they never paused long enough to ask, "Why did this happen? What can I take from this?" Instead of extracting the lesson, they bury the pain, blame others, or run from discomfort. But true growth requires the opposite, a willingness to sit with failure, analyze it, and ask difficult but necessary questions. Learning from mistakes starts with radical honesty. You must be honest with yourself about what you did, what you didn't do, and how your choices influenced the outcome. That doesn't mean you blame yourself harshly. It means you hold yourself accountable. Accountability is empowering. It means you have the ability to change the outcome next time. You also need to be specific. Vague reflections like, "I just wasn't good enough," don't help. Instead, look for patterns. What decisions led you here? What signs did you ignore? What skills were you lacking? This kind of analysis turns failure into a blueprint for growth. And once you've learned the lesson, apply it. That's the key difference between people who stay stuck in cycles of failure and those who rise above them. Learning is not just thinking, it's changing your behavior. It's taking what failure taught you and making different decisions next time. Understand this: every successful person you admire is standing on a mountain of mistakes. The difference is, they climbed it one lesson at a time. Mistakes are not roadblocks, they are road signs pointing the way forward. One of the most damaging things we do when we fail is confuse the event with our identity. We say things like, "I failed, so I must be a failure." But this kind of thinking is not only untrue, it's toxic. It attaches your self-worth to a single moment or outcome and locks you into a false belief that who you are is defined by what went wrong. But here's the truth: you are not your failures. A failed project doesn't mean you're incapable. A failed relationship doesn't mean you're unlovable. A failed business doesn't mean you're not intelligent or resourceful. Those are experiences you had, not who you are. Think about a child learning to walk. They fall down hundreds of times before they take their first step, yet no one calls them a failure. We don't tell them to give up or shame them for not getting it right on the first try. Why? Because we understand that failure is part of the learning process, especially for someone just starting out. So why do we forget that same truth as adults? When you define yourself by your failures, you shrink. You start avoiding challenges because the cost of failure feels too personal, too painful. You don't take risks. You don't put yourself out there, not because you lack ability, but because you fear what failing says about you. To grow, you must learn to separate the result from your self-worth. Failing doesn't make you less valuable. It makes you more experienced, more courageous, more prepared for the next round. This detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you develop a healthy relationship with setbacks, one that allows you to look at failure objectively without self-punishment. Instead of saying, "I'm not good enough," you begin to say, "That didn't work, but I'm still learning, and I'm not done yet." You are a work in progress. You are allowed to stumble. You are allowed to get it wrong. What matters is that you don't let any single failure define your entire story. Because your identity is not based on one result, it's built on your resilience, your growth, and your decision to keep going. Resilience is the quiet force behind every comeback story, the strength that doesn't always shout, but never stops standing. It's the mental and emotional muscle that allows you to rise, not just once, but over and over again, even when life tries to push you down. And here's the thing, resilience isn't something you're born with, it's something you build, and failure is the gym where that strength is trained. Every time you face disappointment or defeat, you are given a choice: give up or get back up. And the moment you choose to rise, no matter how small that step may be, you're building resilience. You're proving to yourself that you can take a hit and still move forward, that pain doesn't paralyze you, it propels you. Resilience doesn't mean you're unaffected by failure. It means you feel the pain, acknowledge it, but don't surrender to it. You don't pretend it doesn't hurt, you just refuse to let it break you. Instead of seeing failure as a wall, resilient people see it as a test, one that challenges their character, sharpens their focus, and prepares them for the next level. And the more often you push through failure, the more confident you become. Not just confident in success, but confident in your ability to survive difficulty. That's a different kind of power, one that isn't shaken by setbacks or fear of rejection. Because when you know you can endure failure, you stop being afraid of trying. This strength also begins to affect how you show up in life. You start to embrace challenges rather than run from them. You welcome new experiences, risks, and bold steps because you've developed trust in your inner strength. You've seen yourself break, and you've seen yourself rebuild. So remember, resilience isn't just about bouncing back, it's about bouncing forward. Each time you rise after a failure, you're not returning to who you were. You're becoming stronger, wiser, and more capable than before. Failure doesn't weaken you, it forges you. Like steel in fire, you come out tougher, and that toughness, that resilience, becomes the foundation of lasting growth. At the core of transforming failure into growth lies one of the most powerful ideas in psychology and self-development: the growth mindset, coined by psychologist Carol Dweck. A growth mind, it is the belief that your abilities, intelligence, and talents are not fixed. They can be developed through effort, learning, and perseverance. People with a fixed mindset believe that failure is proof of their limitations, that they just don't have what it takes. They see setbacks as confirmation that they're not smart enough, talented enough, or lucky enough. As a result, they avoid challenges, fear feedback, and give up easily. In contrast, those with a growth mindset understand that failure is not an endpoint, it's a starting point. When they stumble, they don't see themselves as incapable. Instead, they say, "I haven't figured it out yet." That one small word yet opens the door to improvement and possibility. Embracing a growth mindset changes how you interpret failure. It shifts your inner dialogue from self-judgment to self-inquiry. Instead of saying, "I failed because I'm not good at this," you begin to ask, "What did I learn? How can I improve? What skills do I need to develop to get better?" This mindset gives you freedom, the freedom to take risks, to try new things, and to stretch beyond your current limits. It allows you to step outside your comfort zone because you're no longer focused on proving yourself, you're focused on improving yourself. When you adopt a growth mindset, every failure becomes a form of training. You're building experience, insight, and resilience. You become less afraid of being wrong because you realize that mistakes don't define you, they shape you. You stop aiming for perfection and start aiming for progress. Over time, the growth mindset becomes more than just a belief, it becomes a way of life. You begin to welcome challenges, seek feedback, and celebrate small wins, knowing that they're all part of a larger journey of growth. And you start to understand that the people who achieve the most are not those who never fail, but those who never stop learning. So when failure knocks at your door, don't close it. Let it in, learn from it, and allow it to grow you. Because with the right mindset, failure isn't the end of the story, it's where real transformation begins. Some of the world's most revolutionary breakthroughs in business, technology, science, and art were not born from perfect plans. They were born from failure, from experiments that didn't go as expected, ideas that were initially rejected, and setbacks that forced people to rethink everything. This is the hidden power of failure. It doesn't just teach you, it pushes you to create differently. When things go wrong, they shake you out of routine. They disrupt your comfort zone. And in that disruption, your mind begins to search for new paths, new methods, and new perspectives. Failure challenges your assumptions and exposes flaws that success might have masked. It forces you to ask, what could be done better? What hasn't been tried yet? What if I looked at this from a completely different angle? Take the story of Post-it notes. The original glue used in their creation was actually a failed formula. It wasn't strong enough for standard use. But instead of discarding it as useless, the creators looked at it differently. They asked, what if a weak glue could be useful for temporary sticking? That failed product became one of the most successful office supplies in history. In every industry, from medicine to marketing, mistakes have led to genius because the people involved didn't stop at the failure. They explored it. They turned it upside down. They treated it like a spark for imagination. Because innovation doesn't usually happen in moments of certainty. It thrives in moments of doubt, disruption, and difficulty. This same principle applies to your personal growth. When something you tried didn't work, that failure is often a sign that it's time to innovate not just in your work, but in your thinking, your habits, your strategies. Maybe your approach needs a redesign. Maybe your mindset needs to evolve. Maybe your definition of success needs to be broader, more creative, more aligned with who you truly are. But to reach that kind of innovation, you have to be open. You have to resist the urge to label failure as the end. Instead, view it as the beginning of a new creative process. Ask yourself bold questions, experiment, play, rebuild. The people who succeed on extraordinary levels are rarely the ones who got it right the first time. They're the ones who used failure as fuel for invention. So when failure visits your journey, don't just fix what's broken, reimagine it. Let it lead you into uncharted territory. That's how ideas are born. That's how you grow. And that's how transformation becomes not just possible, but unstoppable.